Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, one and all, to a brand new edition of The Quinn Spinn. I'm your host, The Quinn. At least that's how I'm known here on the program, and I'm back here on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more for another rousing and riveting installment of the official podcast of Underground Music Collective. That's right, UMC is back, baby. I'm going to explain more about what that means here in the coming weeks, but for now, let's keep our focus on the show and let you know that the song you just heard at the top of the show was REVEL 9's All I Become, which has been our opening theme song since the great year of 2014, and it will be until the very end of days. And I'm very excited to be back here this week, very excited to welcome today's guest. Joey Drolshagen is one of the top business coaches in the country and the innovator of the subconscious mindset training method. And what I love about Joey is, like many of us, he had a 9-to-5 and he decided that he was called to something different, called to something greater, a greater purpose, and went in pursuit of that purpose. And he is serving, he is a leading mind in the coaching space, in the mindset space, and he is going to give you so much wisdom here today on the show. This is a great conversation. I really, really appreciate Joey taking the time out to chat, and I look forward to doing this again because there's still so much left to uncover, but this is going to give you a nice taste of what Joey brings to the table as a coach, as a speaker, as an author, and just as an all-around human being. So here it comes. I'll be back to wrap it up. All right, everybody. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I am joined by Coach Joey himself, Joey Drolshagen, who is one of the top business coaches in America. Subconscious mindset training is his specialty. And we're going to talk so much about mindset, about how you as an entrepreneur, as a creative, can go forth and build your platform on your terms and live the life that you want. So Joey, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here with you, Gerard. From the time we first talked about this, I've been excited for this conversation.
Me too. There's so much to share. In that first conversation we had, we just went over an hour, and we were just chatting it up and just like, comparing notes and just comparing, things that we've seen on our journeys. And I'm really excited because I know this is going to be a valuable conversation for everybody listening or watching. So before we get deep into the weeds of everything, I ask every guest of the show 3 standard questions, which you can answer however you'd like. And those 3 questions are: who are you? What are your passions? And why on earth would you want to come on the Quinn Spinn?
Absolutely. So who am I? I'm Joey Drolshagen. I'm a father. I follow God. I'm a minister. And really I've had this passion my entire adult life to help people live better lives. And that's been my passion and my charge in everything that I do. Even when I was off track doing other things, it was my passion. And the reason I'm excited for us to have this conversation today is, we've talked about this is so many people that are creative, whether it's music, art, whatever it is and stuff, they got such a passion for that. And but they're not in alignment with that entrepreneurial spirit that helps them to really grow and expand what they do, to have a bigger impact, to make better revenues, things like that. So I'm really excited for that.
Me too. And you mentioned alignment, and you mentioned even when you weren't doing this, it was your passion, right? So one question I have right off the bat is, how does somebody feel when they're out of alignment? And what did that feel like for you? Because you spent a lot of time in corporate America, you rose all the way up to leadership positions and eventually felt this calling to help entrepreneurs and to help business owners. So what inspired that shift, and how did you feel out of alignment, and how do you bring yourself into alignment?
Yeah, great question. And at 22 years old, I'm a few years older than that now, a few decades older than that now. But at 22 years old, I knew that I wanted to inspire, motivate, and lead people to live better lives. But I didn't know how to do that in my own life. And so I became a student of the works I do today at that time, and it's been consistent throughout. But because of my conditioning, I was taught that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement. I got into corporate America. I ended up building a career, getting my degrees, my school degrees and all of that and such, and built all the way up to a vice president of sales. And I've learned a lot, and I had a lot of successes. But you know what it was when you say, how does it feel to be out of alignment? For me, for a lot of people that I talk to, there's just a lack of fulfillment in living life. We feel like we're not getting that mark. Like I felt like I wasn't getting to that mark, and what I did achieve wasn't in alignment with what was really important to me.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, Gerard, I went through times of using food, alcohol, gambling, things like that to deal with trying to be okay enough.
Hmm.
At the end of my corporate career, I was a vice president of sales, helping organizations in bankruptcy back to profitability, making a lot of money, good at what I did, but it didn't have that fulfillment. I felt empty. And I think that would be the key thing is there's like an emptiness feeling like, yeah, I'm living this life, but I'm not impacting the way I'm supposed to be impacting. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that definitely resonates with me because I can tell, coming out of college, like, and those first few years, there was a lot of that lost, empty feeling, even when I
Yeah.
found gainful employment, which I graduated right into the recession, right? So that wasn't exactly easy to do. I was freelancing the first couple of years, and then
Mm.
I stumbled into a pretty good job, well paying. And honestly, I did learn a lot at that job, but there was always this feeling of like, is this all there is? Like I'm supposed to be happy with this. I now have the American dream. I have this steady job that pays well for a major corporation. I have a long term relationship. I have, you know, plenty of money to not only get by but like to enjoy life, but like there was something missing, and it was that lack of fulfillment. And that was 2012, 2013. In August 2013, as the story goes, launched this show 10 plus years later, through all the ups and downs, still here, but like there is always that piece missing if we're not going with what our intuition tells us, if we're not going toward what we feel called to do. And so,
Yeah.
what was the moment for you when you decided that you were just going to go for it? Like, was there a particular like aha moment or something that just like, it was like a spark in the night, or was it more of a gradual build?
It kind of was somewhat of a gradual, but it came to a point like where, kind of hitting the wall type of a thing is
Mm-hmm.
I told you I've used alcohol enough to where I had to reach out and ask for help and such. And like, I got into that trap and couldn't get myself out of it and such. And so that was a part of it. And then as I stopped drinking and quit using things, you know and again, I have multiple certifications and education in what I do and such, but when I quit using things, I started bumping up against that unfulfillment feeling that no matter what it was, the money didn't seem like it was a big deal anymore, being able to go where I want and travel and stuff like that. It lost meaning to me. For a while you can get by on those things,
Mm-hmm.
and my father passed away. My mom and dad, I watched them struggle my entire youth, but they were such good people, and they didn't have the tools we have today. So my dad passed away of cancer, about, I think it's been like 14 years now. And a year later, my mom just didn't want to be alive without her other half. And she passed away of natural causes. I mean, she didn't really have any disease or anything like that. And she passed away. And I found myself an orphan. And here I am, an orphan, still following the conditioning that I was taught that a man gets a job and supports a family. And I felt literally, I've tried breaking out of that a few times in my life. And I felt like it was a trap, like it was my only process available to me. And so I started looking at that with the people who gave me the conditioning are no longer here. At that time, it came across to me about the subconscious mind, a book by Joseph Murphy, The Unconscious Mind.
Mm-hmm.
And in reading that, it really clicked everything together in what is now known as the SMT method, subconscious mindset training. And it's about retraining that. So once I understood that, it was like, I can't stand living like this anymore. And when I understood that other piece about the subconscious and the importance that plays, and how my patterns, my beliefs, and all that were pushing me down this avenue where I didn't even want to go, within a month, I started IFGT Coaching Consulting. The IFGT stands for It's Frickin' Go Time. And within 2 months of that, I literally resigned from corporate America, moved down to the mountains here in South Carolina where I live today, and started building a business.
Mm-hmm. A couple things I want to pick out from that. I mean, first of all, you mentioned escapes, like whether that's alcohol, whether that's gambling, whether that's food, whatever it can be. For some people, it could be drugs, it could be social
Mm-hmm.
media, it could be travel. I mean, living a balanced life, is giving yourself permission to enjoy things, but also like any one of those things, even travel can become an escape. I think of a few people who, they travel all the time, and like it's great. They get to see a lot of places, but like in a way, you can kind of also see that they do it because, they're not happy with, where they're rooted and where their life is taking place actively. Right. I mean, I've even been guilty of that a couple times myself. And I think it's really important to recognize that anything can become an escape. And ultimately, if you want true fulfillment, you're going to have to face down, your hangups about living the life you want and going the direction you want to go. And I think, yeah, as men in our society, we were always taught, grow up, get a job, get married, buy the house, have the kids, like have that white picket fence. And the white picket fence, especially in this day and age where the American dream is, a lot harder to come by. And I think a lot more of an abstract concept, like, you have to define what that is for you. And for some people are happy, working their job and, working for a company and being able to contribute
Yes.
their ideas to that company, to society in that way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of us, we want to create something of impact. We want to create something of legacy. We want to impact other people through what we have to share through our lens. Right. And so, I mean, that's why, for me, like, going into this entrepreneurial space is so exciting because it's like you get to create it and you get to align your values with the values of, like-minded folks who also want to create and have an impact and improve the world around them. Right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
no, go for it. Go for it.
You're kind of sparking me because with that is a lot of your audience with musicians and artistic people and things like that. Entrepreneurship is the same thing. Entrepreneurship is not following that mold or that pattern and stuff like that. But what happens is a lot of artists, they get into their music, they get into whatever that may be, their art, whatever it may be that they are, and they lean into that. And the entrepreneur feels like it's a whole nother avenue, but it really isn't. Entrepreneurship is a creation. And it's getting into that alignment with that creation and understanding if you're coming from that side of the brain, if you're coming from that creative side, it's already there. Like you have more power going into it than somebody coming from the other side with the logical side of things. So really what it is just understanding that and looking at entrepreneurship a little bit differently and that it is creativity. Any entrepreneur, there's all these things and programs and everything that tells you, if you want to be an entrepreneur, I got your roadmap and you do A, B, and C and you get D, but it never, ever works like that, Gerard. Right. Entrepreneurship is very unique, just like our conditioning is unique to the individual, but it is about creation. It is about being creative that opens up that avenue. And the more creative we can be, when we get into alignment with that, the easier it becomes and the more exciting it becomes. And that's the difference when I resigned and stepped down here into South Carolina is I instantly went from, I was going to see the Northern Lights in Alaska, and I was going to Moab, and I was going to all these places, traveling in that mode of trying to fill something up. And today, I don't have to travel anywhere to just feel like awed with this life I get to live.
Yeah.
Because we're living in that passion.
And I'm so glad you touched on that parallel between artistry and entrepreneurship, because artistry is entrepreneurship. And I feel like, just in 10 plus years of doing the show and making my way through the industry, like so many artists are thinking like employees for jobs they don't even have yet because they're trying to cater to the industry, the traditional industry model. Oh, my music needs to sound like this, and I need to write songs that are no longer than 3 minutes, and I need to go viral on TikTok so a label notices me and I get signed. And, it doesn't work that way. Or if it does work that way, it works for a very small percentage of artists. You pretty much have to win the lottery. And then even if you win the lottery, you have to stay signed. Like, they could drop you if they don't feel that you're going to sell enough, and they'll just move on to the next 20, 21-year-old kid who, will come in and do a better job fitting their mold. Artistry is entrepreneurship. Our artistry inherently cannot be fit into this box, right? And that's the entire point of this whole pivot from Underground Music Collective now to ECM, is to teach the artist to be an entrepreneur, because ultimately for the vast majority of us creatives, we've got to do it as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, because you hear all the time, nobody's coming to save you. The music industry, certainly musicians, artists listening to this, any creative, has no interest in saving you. They have an interest in seeing if they can sell you. And if they can't sell you, they'll find somebody else. So you want to be in line with your integrity and successful, be an entrepreneur and start treating your endeavors exactly that way. I'm so glad, Joey, that you said that
Well,
because
and to take it a little further with what you said, which is absolutely correct, is so many people that are in the music, arts, things like that, stuff, living from that creative side, what they do is when they look at the business side, is they try to convert themselves over to logic. Right? Here's what I have to do, and here's what I have, how many posts I have to do, and how many people I need to get in front of, how much When honestly, I love working with creative people like that, much more so than I enjoyed working with people like me who come from the logic side of life, because what I have to do is help that person shift over and get into the creative side and get out of the logic.
mm-hmm.
But we have so many people in music and different industries like that and stuff who are trying to apply that logic, which only holds them up and makes it much harder to do than if they take that creative side of where they're already living well in and move into it with that. So absolutely.
Yeah.
That was great the way you said that, Gerard.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just coming from experience, and thank you. It's just like witnessing it, experiencing it myself. Like even, I remember a few months ago, I was talking to somebody in the industry who's been there for a long time about like sync placements and like the industry is just not looking for rock music. If you're a rock band, like it's a mark against you in the music industry right now. And you would think, well, no, nobody wants rock anymore. No, that's not true. People do want it, but you have to figure out who that audience is and how to market to them, how to connect to them. And you figure out who you are as an artist, who you are as a human being, and how that translates into what you do, and then employ the proven strategies to scale and grow, have different revenue streams. Your music is one thing, your merchandising, become an author, become a speaker, like do all these things, incorporate all these things into your platform and align yourself with the right people who have been there. Find mentors, find coaches, find different people that can help fill different roles to grow your business. You can't do it yourself. You can't even do it just with the 4 or 5 people in your band. You need people who have been places you haven't been before. And that's something that I again recently was just in Denver for a business conference, and it affirmed a lot of these things that I've been thinking for a long time, and really blew the game open for me, because it's just like, now it's undeniable. Like this is the path. This is the future for the artist, for the entrepreneur. We need to put the power back in the creative's hands. And because you're not going to change this industry from the inside. You're never going to change it from the inside, because the industry doesn't want to change, because that change will not benefit the people in charge of it. You need to change it from the outside. You need to provide an alternative and force it to change on its own. But don't worry about changing the industry. Focus on building your platform and building up the people around you. That's so key.
And it is key. And the other thing you said there, what a great example you use about a rock band and things like that. So often we'll get these people who are living from their heart. They're coming about living in their passion, bringing that forward. It might be a rock band, let's say, because that's the example you gave. And what they'll do is they'll go, okay, there's not the popularity for rock bands, so let's start doing this instead. And they start moving away from their passion. And what they're doing is exactly what it was like for me in corporate America, is they're no longer living in that passion. If we could understand there isn't a single pathway or a most popular way to get there, the best and the most surest way of doing it is live through that passion. If your passion is for rock music and that's what you do and that's what you really thrive on and stuff, that's your attraction factor. So by doing that, you're going to start attracting people. It doesn't matter what's going on as a market and all these things we put on things. Again, going back to logical thinking, none of that matters. What matters is that you're living in that passion, because when you do, you're doing it better than anybody else can do it. And so you start attracting people, and it might not be as, like when they break them into categories and things like that, but you're going to attract more than enough people. And then the other part of that you said is we cannot do it alone. I cannot do this alone with what I'm doing, my mission to inspire, motivate millions of people to live better. I can't do it on my own. People like you and I connecting, people like our friend Steve Ramona and connecting with him and the whole servant's heart thing and living through that. And even our own experiences then, like the experiences of my life of motorcycle accidents and all the things I've been through help me then that I have available to help other people. And when we're living like that, all we got to do is live in what feels good for us, whether it's rock music, speaking, coaching, whatever it is. And avenues are going to open up to us. we cannot help but to open up those avenues. We might have to shift some of that conditioning in the subconscious in order to do so, but it cannot help but to bring about those results in that area for us to live in our passion, because that's what was placed in our heart to follow through in this lifetime, to have the impact that our life is supposed to have.
Right, right. And that's the thing too. Something I want to touch on here as well is, we each have our own unique experiences. We each have our own unique traits and skill sets and behaviors that inform and shape who we are. That gives you something to provide that nobody else on earth is quite as equipped to provide as you. A few weeks ago, had Dylan Huey on the show, who's another contact through Steve Ramona, our friend Steve. And Dylan made a very, very good point about your value proposition. And pretty much, what can you provide to your audience that they can't get anywhere else? Who are you? What are your values? How does that communicate through what you do in a way that no one else can deliver? What is unique about your story and your journey that you can use to help people and that they can gravitate toward? And we all have that. We all have that story. And I think, we're all in this society a lot of the times, discouraged from really exploring that or sharing that because of that whole like blueprint that we're told to follow, or, even within an industry, an industry like the music industry that places this rigidity upon creativity. Like you have to do this, it has to be this, and you have to be this young or it's not going to work for you. Like that's not true. Like I work with clients in their 30s, in their 40s who have a lot to share, have a lot of unique experiences. And as a matter of fact, have even more to share because of their life experience, more so than somebody in their 20s, and it's like, that person's voice deserves to be heard. That person's voice is valid, and they have something unique about their journey that only they can communicate. And for anybody watching, listening to this, whether you're a musician, whatever line of work you're in, you have that to share, and you can communicate that, given the tools we have at our disposal here in the 21st century, to your audience, no matter what you do. And so I wanted to make sure we touch on that too, because everybody has that thing. Everybody has that thing and knows intrinsically what they're here to do. Right. And it's just a matter of really giving yourself the room to explore that and cut back all the layers, that society places upon us, that our vices place upon us, and really digging into that purpose.
Absolutely. And kind of shifting just a little bit here is we're talking about this. It sounds easy. The question coming up in my head is, then why don't we all do it? And the reason for that I have found in my life, in the people I've worked with and helped serve and stuff, is the subconscious. In the subconscious, there's what I call a motherboard, a programming of all of our experiences, our beliefs, our patterns, our paradigms, our go-to places. It's where we get in our comfort zone. But also, George, within that motherboard is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or that we don't take. So if you think about that, if I'm going about based on something that says, I'm not fitting into the major league of things, and so I'm not going to get there and stuff like that, if that's the patterning we have, we'll never break through that until we do something about that programming in the subconscious. That right there, people, it's not our outside circumstances or situations. It's not where we come from. It's not what we have in the bank. It's not the people we're aligned to and such. It's that programming that determines how far into our passion we can go and how far we can, expand in our lifetime. And the good news about that is that anytime you can shift that programming and bring about greater opportunities and bring about greater, growth in your life.
Absolutely. And that's so much of the work that you do, is helping people tap into that programming and reroute that programming, because it is, at the end of the day, it's all circuitry, like we have electrical currents that run through us, and in the brain as well. And so subconscious mindset training, how did you develop this? How did you develop this method to where you're able to help the folks that you work with really tap into that and reprogram and make those meaningful changes to go forward and live their purpose?
Yeah, and it all started, like I said, 22 years old, this passion ignited in me. But at that time, I was following the same struggle I saw my parents have my entire youth. If something came easy for me back then, I thought I didn't deserve it. So I wouldn't experience too many of those. And I had all these lofty goals, but I could only achieve a fraction of what they were. So it's really been like, I laugh about it, but I've been the guinea pig of the SMT method my entire growing up adult life, and I'm still growing and learning from, but through those experiences of that and getting to understand the processes and apply them and experiment and things like that over years, what's taken me years to learn, my clients now understand in weeks. They get through that growth period, but it was because I went through that model of the long form of it, of understanding it and bringing about that change, that I'm sitting here with you today. Otherwise, I wouldn't be. So it was really about being the guinea pig of all of this stuff, and really, aside from assisting other people, it was I have to do something different in my life in order to be able to have something to give to other people.
Right.
And so it's been that continual passion to be and have the mark I want to have with my lifetime that's kept me going through that process.
Right. And I think that's really important to know too, is like, we are only equipped to teach those things that we've experienced, and by going into the coaching lane, it comes from this desire, this calling to help other people through the things that we've encountered on our journeys, because these are such common threads, the subconscious programming, the fears that we encounter, the barriers that are put in place, and programmed into us by whatever has happened in our life, whether it's just societal programming, whether that's trauma.
Yes.
We have to work through our things so we are in a position to serve. It's that cliche of you can't pour from an empty cup, but I think it goes even further than that, to the point where it's like, you experience your own growth, and then you're able to truly understand what goes into it, so you can encourage other people, inspire other people toward it. And that ultimately is what creates this rippling effect of people who are more aware of themselves. They're more aware of their programming. They're catching themselves in it sooner, right? So then they can flip that switch. And I say flip the switch, but it's a process, and there are always going to be those things that come up, those highs and lows, where you revert back, those triggers that appear. It's just, you learn how to manage them better over time. You'll learn how to catch them faster. And, whereas something might have ruined your day or even week or even month beforehand, it's like, okay, that thought popped in, but I know how to manage my relationship with that. I've changed my relationship with that thought, with that event, and I'm going to carry forward. I think we've all had those moments where we've, had some pretty major shakeups in our lives that, we didn't in the moment really enjoy or appreciate, right? But it's changing your relationship with those events, and also changing their meaning, to be something that helped you grow and helped you point your compass, toward something better.
Yeah, I wrote my first book. Is on the shelf somewhere back there, but my first book was called Life's Lessons, and it's when I quit looking at life as happening to me. I'm the victim, and I quit looking at it like that, and I started looking. Okay, if I really believe life happens for me and not to me, then the next step is I had to take the judgment out of the things happening. They couldn't be good or bad, right or wrong, things like that and stuff, because that put me back in the victim mode. And then I could say, what is this trying to show me? And all of a sudden I could start learning from that. And I could start like having so many experiences that started bringing about, insights and understandings that could start moving me through that, and start helping me understand. And each one of those, and I'll tell you, you mentioned this earlier, I could not have done this alone without how many different coaching programs and self-study programs and books and mentors and, therapy and everything else I've been through. It's all led me to this place where I get to live this life and then help other people to really expand entrepreneurship in their life. It's not, entrepreneur isn't something we do. It's a place we come from. And as like you talked about, Gerard, as we shift that conditioning and we start opening up, we all have those natural abilities and the leadership and all that inside of us that we need. It's just how we view it and how what we've heard about in our programming and stuff that has us look at it as a business structure, type of a thing and stuff, when it's really just living through the freedom of creativity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What would you say if there's a common thread and the folks that you've worked with and the folks that you've served, is there a common thread as far as a barrier that continually shows up? And what has been an effective way to get around that barrier or those barriers that continually are the common threads among creatives, among entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I would say one of them is fear. I mean, fear is one of the mighty ones. It's like an inferno that fear will stop us from taking any action at all. It will halt so many people's desires without ever getting a single step, action step into it and stuff. And all fear really is. So I start right sizing it. All fear really is. I took up hang gliding a while ago. Last October was my first launch off a 2,000-foot mountaintop with me and a hang glider. And I ran 3-4 steps off of it and I was in the air. And there was so much fear when I was standing there and prepping and getting ready and leveling and everything and stuff. My insides were going, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, stop. To the point I took the first step and I could feel my heart beating in my throat, and everything was so intense and everything inside of me is going, stop. No. And the moment my feet left the ground, it was just the most amazing experience I've ever had. And that's what happens just on the other side of fear. But fear will try to stop us from getting to that point. And all it really is for me to run off that mountaintop, I had to get outside of my comfort zone, quite a bit outside of my comfort zone. And we can live within our comfort zone. We have the most control there, but it's the most restrictive way to live as well. So when we step outside of the comfort zone, there's going to be fear. Anybody who a band that wants to, make it big, there's going to be fear involved in that. But understanding and right sizing that fear, where fear isn't really telling us we can't, it's just saying we haven't done so yet. And then we can start using fear as an ally to help us prep and make sure we're ready to go. And we've checked out, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's and things like that and stuff versus a stopping point. That's one. And then the other one I would say, Gerard, is people don't have a clear vision of what that end point is. So many people I meet and I go, what do you want out of life? And they go, I don't know. And it's like they're so exhausted, even at the age in 30s, they're so exhausted with the upsets and disappointments that they don't even take the time to do that. But if we don't have clarity on what that looks like, if we don't have clarity for me, inspiring, motivating millions of people, and I do those through speaking, coaching, I'm only one person. So part of my plan is I have another company where we certify other coaches. So I get to expand the footprint that way. So coming from that point of, okay, I want to inspire and motivate millions of people. How am I going to do that? And looking at what feels good, what would excite me to get to do that would lead to that. Mm-hmm. When we put some time into that, what we're doing is we're setting up that end point of what it looks like. And all of a sudden, we've heard all these things in books and everything about vision-driven life. But what happens is we start getting led by that vision. So the situations and circumstances that pop up, instead of controlling us and determining what we can and cannot do, they're just little speed bumps. They don't get near as much of a reaction or the importance in this. It's like, okay, I'll get through this one and then we get going again, and rather than stopping us or halting us from what we want to achieve. That's the really big one.
Yeah, led by vision. I love that, because if you're not led by your vision and if you're not taking charge to lead your own life, something else is going to come in and lead you. And more likely than not, the vast majority of us led by something else are led by something that isn't in alignment with our true purpose, right? So you have to pick that point. You have you begin with the end in mind, right? As the saying goes, and you do reverse engineer that so the steps you need to take to get there. And you also know where everything is leading you. Even in the moments where it gets difficult, it gets challenging, you still have that point that that you're destined for, and it's just a matter of continuing to follow the trail and work through those challenges, navigate the storms, because the storms are going to come up no matter what. But it's a matter of your preparedness for them as to whether or not you'll survive them, And the other point on fear I love, because we do have to change our relationships with fear. Fear, as you said, can become an ally. It can become something that motivates us in a positive way instead of motivates us away from what we're trying to do. But you have to face it and you have to give it a name, and you have to give it, you have to take away its power by looking at it and going through it anyway, I mean, and whether that's, a professional fear, whether that's something, more internal, a personal fear, in a relationship or something, like the only way to conquer that fear and to change that relationship with that fear is to engage it. You have to engage your fears or they're just going to keep
You're making me
fears.
so happy right now.
And they're only going to grow in your mind, like.
Well, and the reason I say that is the best way to go through fear is taking action into it. Most of the time, our fear is paper thin. All the buildup of fear, all of that, like over consuming, that's in the fear is only there while we're thinking about it.
Right.
When we take an action into it, all of a sudden it starts dissipating. Taking that first step, the third step off of that mountaintop, once my feet left the ground, there was no more fear.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I can think of a recent situation in my own life where, like, there was somebody that, in the romantic sense, kind of had a falling out with not too long ago. And like, I would do everything I can to avoid her, until I ended up in the same environment as her and realized that I had built her up in my mind to be this 30-foot demon where she's just a human who makes mistakes, and it's like by changing my relationship with that fear, like it kind of woke me up to this all over again. Right. Where it's like what the things that we're afraid of, we pump up so much, but at the end of the day, there's really not as much there. There's not as much to be afraid of as, we make it out to be in our own minds. Our minds play these tricks on us to make our fears appear much larger than they are. Like, like the thing in the rear view mirror, except it's the inverse of that because, objects in the mirror are larger than they appear. The objects in our fear mirror are actually smaller than they appear and we make them out to be.
Yeah, and you touched on a third point with I don't even know if you realize you did. So we talked about those two. The other major thing that I see people come into, and I was a victim of this for so long in my life, is we feel like, okay, we get the vision, and then you said something similar to, and then we figure out how to do it. And one of the things when we get into that alignment, we no longer have to worry about the how. We get the vision, we put the vision on, we get excited, we do our part with it. And all of a sudden, and we've all experienced where coincidences or out of the blue things happen to something just to show up. That's what we want or better than what we want. And we didn't really effort it into existence. We didn't strategize it and live through our logical mind, which a lot of times I call the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is when I'm living through here, it's only as powerful as this width between my two ears. But when I start moving into living from that place of feeling tone of that place of that vision and excitement and things like that, all of a sudden I tap into universal God, whatever people want to believe. I believe it is God, but believe it. And all of a sudden we have all these resources that are showing up, and we can literally live by design of experiencing coincidence after coincidence, after out of the blue, continually happening, bringing things about. And I'm telling you, that's how I've built this business, is exactly through that method. As long as I tried to figure out the steps and what I needed to do and when I needed to do it and how I needed to do it and all that, I struggled. And once I finally got to the point of being so frustrated, it was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. And I let go. And for me, when I say let go, I started playing pickleball 12 to 15 hours a week. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, people would show up out of the blue with clients, people like you and like Steve, and people would show up in my life. And all of a sudden, this just starts rolling and unfolding. And I got a full client base right now, and I'm getting featured, and I'm getting, things like these conversations right here and stuff are showing up. And I've seen the same thing with bands, I'll say, because I know of some musicians who all of a sudden they start getting these gigs at these higher levels, and they're going, man, it's easy. It's easy. And when we tap into that again through the mindset alignment, when we tap into that with the conscious and subconscious and shift that programming, all of a sudden we get into alignment to start experiencing things. So my vehicle that I use to help people is I help them quickly scale their business, but also to experience greater freedom in their personal lives while doing it. Now, those are opposites from each other most of the time, but when you get into alignment, they become merged between the two of them.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too to give yourself room to like take that pause once in a while. You had mentioned, started playing pickleball more, took a step back from it, like at some point, we get so far in the weeds of doing that we forget that there's a life outside of what we do. And I mean, I've experienced that multiple times in the past 10 years. I just experienced it this past summer, and that really informed our pivot from UMC to ECM because there was just a lot about our current model that had gotten us that far, but I didn't feel was going to get us any further. And I was having a hard time just keeping the hamster wheel spinning, like realizing, assessing what that was. So I did. I went back to New Jersey, and just went to the woods for a couple months and just went pen to paper on it and figured out what does this need to be. And in the meantime, like made all these amazing connections with folks like Steve, who led me to you, and other folks that, now are really important people in my network and really important people in my life, and it's powerful to see what happens when we just let ourselves take a breath and let the purpose, have its say, and let the purpose lead us on that serendipitous journey. Even, 5 years ago, I was getting ready to move to Nashville, and I didn't really have much of a plan for when I got here. I just knew this was where I needed to be. And so I let the doors open, and I wasn't looking just through specific doors. I was looking, I was seeing the whole field and just finding the best path, that way by just observing and just by listening to intuitively like where things were leading, and not questioning and not taking all this time trying to apply that logic to, well, it's like I moved here with less than $500 and whatever would fit my car. Classic moving to Nashville story, you know what I mean? And like
I do.
It was the right move, it ended up like paying off because I was more afraid to stay where I was. And I don't mean that in a location sense because I love Bethlehem, PA, but like in a life sense, I was more afraid to stay there where I was and what I was doing every day than I was to just take a shot and see what happened, and taking that shot, is led me to this conversation. It's led me to so many amazing moments. And, even when things do get challenging, you got to remember that you have to allow yourself to take that step back and to take that moment, to yourself to, not be so in the weeds, pull yourself out of the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that whole thing, I say all the time is, we're human beings. We're not human doings, but we get in that mode in the U.S. more than any other country, with doing. We got to make it happen and everything else and stuff. And when we take that place of just being a being, when we get into alignment with things, it's when like moves from PA, to Nashville and things like that, where they get like there's excitement in that, and there's that like the unfolding of seeing it happen, where it's a story to tell, like a good news story to tell, rather than a struggle through process. When I moved from Iowa down here to South Carolina in the mountains, man, it was just everything, the way it unfolded. I won't go into it, but like so many aspects of the way it unfolded was just such a great experience to get to experience and to get to have to carry around in my heart the rest of my life, versus times when I've tried to make things happen and I've struggled with them and it wasn't fun and it was exhaustive. And it's the reason I have gray hairs.
Yeah. But that's exactly it. Like you remember those times, and like those times, I think we forget to lean on them, right? As like examples of like, hey, everything's going to be fine, but just like trust yourself, trust your intuition, trust where your purpose is leading you, as opposed to just trying to make things fit and force things. I think when I got here to Nashville, it was all about like, oh, well, what does the industry want me to do? How can I serve the industry? It's not about serving the industry. It's about creating a lane, and I think it took me
beautiful.
Yeah. It took almost 5 years to really like not only realize that, but internalize that. And now, 5 years in town, this month as of airing, like I feel like, I'm coming back around full circle to that, like serendipitous, like, there are a lot of things, in development right now that still need their room to develop, but it's definitely all on the right track, and it's because I was able to shut all that noise up, and like, I need to do this. Okay. What do I really need to do? And sometimes what we really need to do is just take that moment and recalibrate ourselves.
Yeah. The more we can stay in alignment, the more we can allow things to work on our behalf, things to start showing up, things like that. The more we get up into the logical mind of figuring out how to do it, the tougher it's going to be. That right there If we can understand that and start applying that and get out of this and just get into excited about that vision, that's all we got to do. If we got that vision of what it is we want, and then we can lean into that with excitement and see that happening, we'll get out of our own way. Mm-hmm. Now, the subconscious conditioning will come up and things like that, but I mean, it'll help to start smoothing that process out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so valuable. Another masterclass here on the Quinn Spinn here today.
Great conversation.
Yeah. And I know we could probably keep going all day, but I know we both have busy schedules, so a couple more questions before we wrap. Joey Drolshagen joining us, by the way, on the Quinn Spinn, and one of the top business coaches in the United States joining us here. And you can see and hear why here today. So if there was one lesson, a lot of people don't know where to start, right? Whether they're creatives, whether they're just trying to kind of get their life in order the way they want it to be, right? If there was one lesson that you would share from your journey that would help somebody do that, help somebody pick that starting point as they look to improve themselves, improve their lives, what would that be?
I would have to say the first one, Trevor, would be to get a vision of what it is you want. What is it you want out of life? Get a vision, get a thought, I write the stuff down because when we write it, we're actually committing to it than just rolling around in our head. But get a vision of what that life looks like. What's it feel like to live that life? Like through the SMT method, we develop dynamic visions, and that's part of it. And once we get that vision, then we can start leaning into that and getting excitement going for that. And then the other thing right along with that is stay the heck away from the how. Don't worry about it, because we really don't care how things are going to show up. We just think that we're responsible for that. So get out of the how and get excited about that and see what action steps you. Everything I do, out of our 5 senses, it's based on using our imagination, which we're so often taught to shut down, and our intuition, which is our alignment to the how. And so get into that place of feeling good about it, and the actions will show up that we need to take. And all of a sudden, we'll realize the actions we take are so minimal compared to the results that come from it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So everything on this episode is like a highlight that could be like its own clip, so I'm really excited. I'm really excited to share this content out, not only, the episode itself, but, all the little pieces of it, because this has been tremendously valuable. Joey, thank you so much for joining us. Before I let you go, how can people get in touch with you? How can people support you?
Yeah, the easiest way, anybody that wants to have a conversation, I obviously love talking about this, reach out to me on my personal cell phone. It's 864-614-3333. And maybe we can put that in the cliff notes. Anybody that wants to talk more about this, I'm very open. It's how I live my life, and I love to have these conversations.
All right. So reach on out to Joey Drolshagen joining us here on the Quinn Spinn. I'll be back with the usual outro stuff. Joey, thanks so much for being a part of this today.
Absolute pleasure, man. Great talking with you, Trevor.
We'll do it again. So there you have it. Joey Drolshagen joining us today on the Quinn Spinn. Coach Joey himself. Again, what an inspiring individual. What an inspiring conversation. Super grateful for Joey taking out the time. Looking forward to doing this again and again and again. And thank you for being here. And if you haven't subscribed, followed, liked, commented, any of that stuff yet, please do. Please engage. It's going to help the show go places, reach more ears, reach more eyes, serve more people. So please, if you like this episode, share it. If you don't like it, share it with your enemies, because they're going to like the things that you don't. And that's why they're your enemies. Anyway, the Quinn Spinn is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, and more. Also on Instagram at Quinn Spinn Official. That's 2 N's in Quinn, 2 N's in Spin. You can also find us on Facebook as well. We've been there. We've been popping off a little more there lately, so worth mentioning. Also, Underground Music Collective, or ECM Collective. We're still changing things over. Facebook won't let me change the name of the page back yet. But we're on Instagram, Facebook, X, I guess, LinkedIn, of course, here on YouTube, where you might be watching this episode. You can also check us out at umusiccollective.com, letter U, musiccollective.com, or ecmcollective.com. Take it to the same place. Revel 9's All I've Become. Going to take us out just like it brought us in. Grab some muffins on your way out.